I know we'll probably continue to have people joining over the next 15 minutes or so, but yeah, thank you all for being on time. We're showing up for Seeding the Future, the info meeting tonight. And for those who have just jumped on, if you can in the chat, write where you're growing and if you're growing some seed. If you have some experience growing seed, what you're growing. It's wonderful to think of all these seed growers out there on these different islands doing this work in these unique microclimates that we have. But yeah, I'm gonna start us off. We're at 5:32, but yeah, for those who have just come on, if you can write in the chat, just yeah, where you're growing and what seed you might be growing in your gardens if you are growing seed. And my name is Evan Ryan, and I'm tuning in from Makawao on the island of Maui. And I'll just share that we're beyond excited to have you all on the call tonight to share about our upcoming Seeding the Future course. And I've been farming on Maui for close to 25 years and have gotten to know the ag community pretty well. Yet every time I host a seed saving class or seed exchange, I'm always really inspired by the number of new faces that show up, eager to learn about seed saving and share seeds. And it's, no different tonight. Just looking at like the number of names from Maui that I don't know. Like these are people that are in the ag community, they're growing in the gardens, maybe they're just hermiting in gardens, but then we start talking about seeds and people just, they show up and they come out of the woodwork, bringing that inspiration. And for me, seed growing symbolizes a direct connection to our ancestral lineages. And it's an opportunity to be a part of something that humans have been doing for thousands of years, which is to a pretty powerful activism or act in this world. And it's also a way of sharing gratitude towards my ancestors by forwarding the work they did to provide such an abundance of diverse edible plants on the planet. So yeah, so really happy to have you all here. And I'm definitely inspired that so many people are interested in growing seeds, because it's something that I believe is really important. Um, and this course that we're talking about tonight is the culmination of a group of us that have been working together for over 10 years on building a seed saving movement here in Hawaii. And we're excited to share our passions with you over the coming months and what we've learned along the way. And yeah, thank you for your curiosity in joining us here tonight. And a little bit of details before we get started. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the chat and we'll do our best to respond to as many of them that we haven't already answered over the course of the meeting before we close the meeting. We might not be able to get to all of them if there's a lot, but we'll see how that goes. And for any follow-up questions after the meeting that don't get answered or that come up after the meeting, you can contact Marielle, who's on this call, and we'll put her email address in the chat, or it looks like she just put her email address in the chat. So you can see that there and you can scroll back to it if you need it. And also in the chat will be a link for the application for the course that's starting up in mid-January. It just got put in there. That application, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but it is due in a week. So there it is for you to apply for the upcoming course. And the course is a collaboration of 6 of us. We'll be guiding you through the next 6 months of growing out 4 different crops for seed. Tonight, we're going to introduce ourselves, share about the history of the project, and go over the course goals and expectations and the syllabus. We'll also give you further information about the application process, as I mentioned. Sadly, 2 of our seed network members, Michelle and Breton, who have been instrumental in designing this course, had a family emergency, so they're not going to be on the call tonight. And yeah, so just to begin by introducing myself, as I said, my name is Evan Ryan, and I have Pono Grown Farm on the island of Maui. We're in upcountry Maui, Olinda, which is just above Makawao town at 2,100 feet. We're growing vegetable production. We have about 2 acres in vegetables, another 8 acres in fruit trees, and chickens and bees. So pretty diversified landscape that is also used for education. We sell food through farmers market, CSA, and wholesale. I'm a mentor for the Farm Apprentice Mentorship Program, which is a mentorship program run by the Hawaii Farmers Union. And I also have a book titled Hawaii Home Gardens, subtitled Growing Vegetables in the Subtropics Using Holistic Methods, which is a comprehensive guide for growing vegetables in Hawaii. And yeah, my passions are basically combining food production and education, and particularly nature connection, just using agriculture as a means to connect us all to our landscapes and the land, and just that, mutually reciprocal relationship that we all share with the land that we're on. And so really grateful to be with a group right now that is stewarding the land. And now I'll pass it on to Marielle.
Thanks, Evan. Hi, everybody. My name is Marielle Hampton. I am a CTAR extension agent for intergenerational and youth development programs, and I'm based in Hawaii County. So back when I was a farm worker, like 10 years ago or however long ago, I took the first Train the Trainers course with Hawaii Public Seed Initiative, and that is where I fell in love with seeds. And so I'm no longer a farmer, but I am an advocate for seed education. So I periodically hold 4-H seed camps to teach kids about seeds. And I also help facilitate intergenerational education opportunities like this one that support experienced growers in passing their knowledge and skills on to the next generation. So, really happy to be here. So excited to be part of this awesome team. I will pass it along to Nancy.
Thanks, Marielle. Aloha, everyone. It is really exciting to see so many people here that are interested in learning how to grow seed and perhaps adding this to either your farm plan or your garden plan and making this a part of your future. I've been living on Hawaii Island for almost 50 years now and growing in every possible area from the ocean front all the way up to 3,000 feet. But for the last 25 years, my husband, Jerry Herbert, and I have been living here at Kawanui Farm. We're in the Mauka area of Kona at the 1,500-foot level. So it's been about 25 years now, and our goals at the beginning were to create a homestead where we could be as self-sufficient as possible here. And we continue to work on that even 25 years later. We've been doing a lot of experimental crops. We worked on coffee for about 15 years. For the last 10 years, we've been working on table grapes for Hawaii, for gardens and growers. And of course, this year, many of the seed growers in the network are doing Asian variety vegetable trials that you'll hear a little bit more about later. So we grow vegetables and fruits, grains, herbs, medicines, spices. And of course, we grow seed for the Hawaii Seed Growers Marketplace. And yeah, I think that's all for now. I think I'll pass it along to Glenn.
Aloha mai kako. I've been farming with my wife, Jane, since 1988 on Molokai. We are Olihua Hawaiian homesteaders. We farm a bunch of different crops. The name of our farm is Puakala Farms. When we started, the Puakala grew wild on our homestead. And Puakala can mean a lot of different things. The flowers of the morning flower, flowers of the flower of the day, the flower that blooms during the day. We grow a mix of crops, including avocados, bananas, papaya, breadfruit, taro, vegetables, and also seeds, including vegetables, herbs, and flowers. Um, we just recently fenced our property because we had a lot of problems with deer, so we fenced off 6 acres. We're probably farming close to 3 acres now of that field. At the end of last year, I retired from the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Agriculture as an extension agent, and I was an extension agent for 42 years, working on a lot of different projects on the island, different crops, different cooperatives, infrastructure development, you name it. My goal is to have produced 40 varieties of seed by the end of this year. I think I'm going to make it. I just harvested a whole pile of seeds. And I look forward to meeting each one of you through these workshops. Aloha.
All right, so Nancy is going to give us a little brief history of the Hawaii Seed Growers Network.
Thanks, Marielle. So this is going to be a pretty brief story. This spans over quite a long period of time, but the amount of years that we've been working actually together has been since 2010. So almost 15 years here. Next slide, please. So in 2003, I and my friend Lynn Howe and Jeff Rauch, who lived over in Puna, we were all inspired to start seed exchanges in East Hawaii and West Hawaii. And the reason that we did it was because we had a feeling that out there in the rural areas of Hawaii, there were many, many gardeners who had been gardening for their families, growing food for long periods of time. And they probably save seed, from their harvest for the next planting. And so we were hoping that if we could, widely share this opportunity of coming together in a seed exchange, that these people would come and they would share their seeds. So what happened over the next 9 years is we continued doing seed exchanges. There's sometimes 500 people would come to our exchanges in East or West Hawaii. But what we noticed was that there might only be 5 to 10 people that were bringing seed to share with other people. Most of the people who were coming were wanting to get seed of local varieties and get started growing in their gardens. I can totally appreciate that. But after doing the seed exchanges for 9 years in both areas, Lynn and I decided that we really needed to do something a little bit more in order to get a local seed group started here across the islands of Hawaii. So in 2009, I was working at that time for the Kohala Center in Waimea, and an opportunity came up through the USDA, the OREI, which is the Organic Education and Initiative, and they were offering that year grant money to any state in the United States who was willing to put on a, oh, I'm sorry, next slide. Who was willing to put on a statewide seed symposium. So we decided to write for that project. And part of the project was that we would do a baseline seed assessment of everyone who was coming. So it turned out to be there was about 150 people came to the Hua Kahua. It was a 2-day event in Keaho on the island of Hawaii. And Dr. Hector Valenzuela, who's there on the far left, he did a baseline assessment, which is quite extensive. And I think Mariel can put in the chat a link of the PDF of that assessment, and also a link to those presentations over those 2 days. So this was in April 2010. So we decided that we needed some help with this conference. And so we asked the Organic Seed Alliance, Michaela Coley and John Navasio, Frank Morton, Matt Dillon, if they could come to Hawaii and help us with our presentations and help us get started. And they said yes. And so they all came, and all of their presentations are on the Kohala Center website on the link that that Mariel will put in the chat. Next slide, please. So after that conference, a group of 25 people came together and formed a working group to decide what we were going to do next. And the next project that we decided to do was that we wanted to do a 2-day training project on seed growing for each one of the islands. And so Glenn and Russell Nagata and myself and Lynn and Paul Massey from Kauai, we got together and we went to each one of the islands and put on a 2-day workshop over a 2-year period. And these workshops were really well attended. I mean, we had between 25 and 50 people attending each one. And we were hoping that after we went over, I understand that a 2-day course is not an extensive seed course, but it is enough to get you started. And so we were hoping that all of those people then would get started and start growing seed on their own. But then we realized after those years that that wasn't quite enough either, that we really needed to do a train the trainers workshop. So we had that in 2013 and 14 at the Amy Greenwell Garden in Kona in Kealakekua. And this is the group that you see here on the screen. These people came together from all over the state, and they came because they were willing to help start seed growing on their islands, either doing additional workshops, helping other people learn how to grow seed, or something. I see you there, Marielle. That's great. So, so after that, next slide, please. So after that, we got together the team that you see there, and we started meeting and having retreats so that we could kind of assess, well, where are we after all of this work? What do we need to do next? And it seemed pretty obvious we needed to launch our own online seed marketplace. And so we worked for a few years on that. We started out with maybe 8 growers. We have now probably 15, 16 growers. And we started working through all the steps that it would take to create an LLC and to create a business, to launch the website, and to start creating this seed network of growers across the state. And so we've been working on that since 2018. We have made a lot of progress, and we have we have some future projects that we're looking at. One of them is perhaps someday we will have our own seed bank. We will have our own distribution center. Right now, we work through the generosity of the Hawaii Island Seed Bank and Jill Wagner. It's a perfect fit for us. She has a beautiful seed lab. She's here in Kona. And we have been banking our seed there and distributing our seed there since 2018, and it's worked really, really well. So we thank Jill for that, of course. And next slide, please. So then I just want to say that this course that we are starting right now has been made available through the Hawaii Department of Agriculture and the USDA Specialty Crop Block Grant. The Specialty Crop Block Grant is available to farmers across the nation to do research and development and education in their particular areas. And we have been so fortunate to have all of these entities here. I don't see HDOA, but HDOA has been instrumental, Sharon Hurd, in supporting our projects over probably the last 5 or 6 years. And that has made all the difference to us. CTAR has been incredibly supportive, Go Farm, the Kohala Center, the Organic Seed Alliance, these Kamehameha Schools, University of Hawaii Hilo, these are all people who along the way of these last 15 years have been instrumental in helping to support this work, and the Cirrus Trust, of course. So that is a very, very short overview of kind of what we've been doing all these years, but we have big plans for the future. And we have a much longer write-up on this that will be available to all those who join our cohort. So I hope that you, and if you have any questions about anything that I've said, please put in the chat and I'll be happy to answer it later. So thank you so much, Marielle.
Thank you, Nancy. That was great. Reliving all those steps that over the last 15 years that have brought us here. So I just wanted to take a few minutes here to go over the goals of the course, as well as our expectations of participants in the cohort. So the primary goal here with this course is to create an opportunity for growers to develop their skills and their knowledge to grow that capacity as seed stewards. And in addition to that, we want to grow Hawaii's network of seed growers. And so the way that Nancy has described how we started out with a core group and then have slowly been expanding over the years, that is what we are hoping to see come out of this type of education, is not just growing the individual level of capacity for seed production, but also strengthening and building that network and growing it out over time so that we can increase local seed production, both for home use and ideally for agricultural use on farms. So the course is basically going to be following the same sort of format that we have tonight, where we have 5 farmers that are going to be walking through the steps that they use to produce seed on their own farms. So you'll have a chance to hear from folks growing in many different environments, different crops. Each farmer will share their own techniques and methods that they use that work for themselves. So you'll get a great sense of the array of options available to you as growers, as well as learning some really hands-on tips and tricks for folks who have been doing seed production on their farm for many years. And really, those farmers are here to support you, the participants in the cohort, in learning to successfully grow and harvest your own quality seed. So they are really there to walk you through the process, provide their own insights, help you troubleshoot so that we can improve your outcome in terms of having high quality seed production. So as you met today, we have Glenn Tevis from Molokai. He's going to be focused on the UH Manoa lettuce variety for this program. Nancy is going to be more focused on a UH pole bean variety. Evan will be working with a large red cherry heirloom tomato that they've been growing seed for on their farm. And then Breton and Michelle will be focused on the Carinata kale that they have in production on their farm on Hawaii Island. So this is perhaps one of the most important moments of this meeting. We want to be really clear about the expectations for folks who are going to participate in this cohort. It is not really intended to be a sort of drop-in educational experience where you can occasionally attend workshops here and there. We are looking for folks who can commit to actively engaging throughout the course. That's going to involve attending live online classes. So you will be expected to attend at least 8 out of the 10 classes live. And if you do miss a class, you would be expected to watch the recording and do all of the readings to make sure that you're caught up. There will be readings available for before the course, during the course, to help deepen your understanding of the course topics. And then you will be producing seed as you are attending this course and learning. So that is also a big part of the process. So to do that, you will be asked to purchase 4 seed packets from Hawaii Seed Growers Network, and that will provide the seed that you'll be using to grow out those crops over the course of the program. And as I mentioned, you'll be expected to grow those crops to seed during the course. And part of that is that you will need to ensure that you have adequate space prepared for growing those crops. We will go through this in more detail, of course, but some crops do require a little more space than growing them just for your own consumption. So that's just something to consider. We do expect participants to harvest seed from the crops that you grow and then share a portion of that back with the Seed Growers Network. Nancy talked a lot about the importance of seed exchanges in terms of strengthening our networks, but also making sure that we are resilient to any kind of issues that come up, whether it's losing access to a seed, somebody's seed varieties, are lost in a flood, whatever that is, the more that we all are sharing with each other, the more that we are strengthening that local network. And then, of course, at the end of the course, we would expect you to participate in a program evaluation survey. That's just going to help us determine how successful we are at providing this education through this course, how we can improve it for the future, and seeing if we're really having the kinds of impacts that we're hoping to with the program. I did want to mention that this course is designed as a 2-year commitment, so that the first year would be these 10 meetings that we would be holding live, where we are working with self-pollinating crops, which are easier to do seed saving for, such as the tomato and the lettuce. And then next year, the goal would be you would deepen your skills and your knowledge by working on some outcrossing plants such as squash. So we can talk about that more when the time comes, but this is not intended to be a one-off thing. We're hoping that we will find folks who are committed to being part of the 2-year program and continuing to improve their skills and production. Just at a glance, this is what the calendar is going to look like for the program next year. The orientation will be on the 15th, and then the actual classes will start on February 5th, and they will be happening after that point every other Wednesday evening from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And I'm just going to pass it off to Glenn really quickly to walk us through some of the course topics that will be covered. Oh, Glenn, you're muted.
I guess class 1, we're just looking at orientation, getting to know each other, our farmer participant introductions, what we do, how we do it, what our farms looks like. Class 2, the importance of seed. I could spend a whole day just talking about that. If we didn't learn from COVID, we'll never learn. There was a major shortage of seeds in Hawaii, and we gave away a lot of seed on Molokai to gardeners. So seed planting, bed preparation, so the whole soil health, and how to plant different seeds. And for a lot of them, there's a lot of different methods. There's not one size fits all. Crop management and good growing practices. For some crops, there's a right and wrong way to do things, and we'll cover that in detail. following the crop from sowing to harvest. We want to be able to cover each step so you folks are really clear about how to grow these 4 different crops. Seed botany and vocabulary to understand the flower structures and how we have cross-pollinating types. We have self-pollinators. Those we have some crops where one plant is a male and the other one is a female, such as spinach. Disease and weed management. This is really important, and the first step is to grow a healthy plant, and you can deal with a lot of these issues. Weed management is probably one of the biggest problems in Hawaii, especially when it rains almost every day. Learning how to troubleshoot, learning how to understand what the problem might be, starting with the simplest problems, such as, did I give it adequate water? Harvesting and processing dry seeded crops. This is really important because what I'm finding out is that you can't grow crops all year round. There's certain crops such as beans that need to be harvested in the dry season. And if you don't have dry weather, you're going to get fungus on the seeds. So some of them will cover some of this. Harvesting and processing wet seeded crops. Some of these seeds will require fermentation, such as tomatoes, peppers, eggplants. I was just doing some fermentation this week. Breeding and selection priorities for Hawaii. This is really important because our climate is very unique. We have over 160 different soil types, and we're finding new ones along the Hamakua coast. In addition, I don't even know how many climatic regions we have, but probably about 8 or 9. You multiply those 2 numbers, and that's how many microclimates we have in Hawaii. So different crops will grow better at in different conditions. Understanding that in the tropics, the warm nights are brutal on certain crops, especially crops developed in Europe and Mediterranean. They're used to weather that are cool nights and hot days, but not hot days and warm nights. So we need to select for crops that are adapted to our tropical conditions, being able to rebound from a bad storm, heat stress, drought, all these kind of issues come into play when you're developing new varieties. Seed storage in the tropics is really important. We have high humidity that are brutal on seed crops, so we need to adequately process and store seeds. And then to understand the economics of the seed business, this is really important. A lot of us are still moving into that area. I do a lot of small batch processing. This week was a big week for me. I processed about 15 different varieties of crop. And it really takes time to understand the business so that you're not just wasting a lot of time and not making money. Because I think if we do things right, we can make this into a viable business even for our small farm. And I think I've covered it.
Awesome. Thank you, Glenn. I did put the calendar in the chat for those of you trying to plan ahead. So I'm just going to briefly talk about the application process. So our goal here is to end up with a cohort of 25 growers. The application, I will go ahead and put in the chat. You will be asked to submit your application in about 1 week. So it's going to be due on December 11th. And then you should be notified about whether or not you've been accepted into the cohort about 1 week later. So pretty quick timeline so that we can be ready to start on that January 15th orientation. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Evan to close us out on the importance of seed saving.
Thank you all. Thanks for your patience and listening to all that information. And yeah, I know we're excited to work with a new group of people. We're also really excited to expand our network with the Hawaii Seed Growers Network. One neat thing about it for me as a grower, I mean, I help run it, but but just as a grower is that I get to grow seed on my farm that I get to use as a farmer, and then I get to send seed into the network, and it's an additional way that I get to receive an income as a farmer. And it's pretty significant. There's some labor involved in it, but it's not very much overhead other than the labor that just adds value to the work that I'm doing as a grower and supports the farm we're caretaking over here on Maui. But we really look forward to working with a lot of you now and in the future. And if you're interested in growing for the network, though the timing of the workshop doesn't work for you, you can keep in mind that I believe, maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but it might be that the second cohort, the second year, would be a time for you to jump in. And so for more experienced growers, they can jump in for the cross-pollinated crops that we're working with next year. So please keep that in mind as well. And if the timing really doesn't work at all for jumping into the course, but you're interested in knowing more about the Hawaii Seed Growers Network and how you can get involved, please reach out to us. As we mentioned, Marielle's email address is in the chat, but she can forward you to someone on your island who may be able to mentor you and support you in growing seed for the network. And I know, as a vegetable farmer, I'm dependent on seed to grow my crops. And currently, most of my seed is flying in from thousands of miles away. And most of that seed has been adapted to soils and a climate that's vastly different from the conditions that I'm growing in. And in the 1930s here in Hawaii, there were over 100 seed companies because it's an ideal climate for growing seed. And at this point, very little seed is being produced. UH has been, spearheaded a lot of seed breeding, seed growing, seed selling on the islands, and the seed lab there has been in decline for a number of years. And so there's less and less available going on and less breeding happening. And so it's become very clear that, it's up to us, the people that are actually like out there in the gardens growing to expand the genetic diversity of the crops we're growing and to provide seed for other growers. And for us, the work that we're doing offers the opportunity to build true resilience in the agricultural communities so that we can continue to have access to the varieties we value and that are locally adapted to our growing conditions. And so we're really excited to work with many of you coming up and to continue to build a resilient future here in Hawaii. And just want to thank all of you for not just your time in being here today, but that that you're caring for your gardens, and for those that are growing seed, and for those that are curious about growing seed, that you're curious, and just expanding the collective knowledge and awareness that we all have and willing to share it with others and continue to, yeah, just as I mentioned, build a resilient future here in Hawaii for all of us. So thank you for joining. And Marielle will field some questions if some questions appeared in the chats, but if whether you already wrote them or not, you're welcome to write some questions in the chat if you have some.
Great. Thank you so much, Evan. So we are going to stick around for a few more minutes to answer questions. If you have to get going, we understand that. We are so excited to have you all here. I don't know if you can feel the energy, but it's been really energizing having everybody gathering here together to prepare to start this cohort next year. So a few of the questions we've had in the chat, all of the classes will be held over Zoom like this, live online. As far as I know, there are no plans for any in-person events that you would need to attend. We will be recording in case you are unable to attend some of the sessions, but as I mentioned, you are expected to attend at least 8 of the online classes live. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. Otherwise, you can send me a message at saveseed@hawaii.edu if there are any other program questions that come up as you are preparing to submit your application by the December 11th deadline.
I do see a question about being a backyard grower, how much space is needed for the class seed saving. And it's not something we have a definitive answer of at the moment because we haven't really calculated it. And we've kind of thought about it from a lot of different angles. Most of the crops that we're working with do require a minimum population size to get the genetic diversity. However, because we're all growing them, and then it requires a lot less plants. But in general, for each of the crops we're growing, it's probably, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's probably something about the minimum of 3 plants that you're going to need. But then there's things like pole beans that are really close together that you're probably going to end up planting all 20 of them on a, 4-foot trellis, something like that. And yeah, so we're expecting experienced gardeners. So if you can imagine at least a few plants of each in your garden, then that will kind of define the space. But there's things like the cardinata kale gets pretty big. It's probably like can get a few feet wide each individual plant, and so a few of them will take up a good bit of space. And so the short answer is just to anticipate having a good bit of space in your garden ready to grow out these crops.
Thanks. We do have a few more questions in the chat about when the classes are happening. So after the orientation in January, the first official class will start on February 5th. And from that point on, it will be every other week, Wednesday evenings from 5:30 to 7. So an hour and a half for each class. There is no plan for a further cohort beyond the second year of this program. So as Evan mentioned, if you are an experienced grower and either aren't interested in the basics of this first year, or maybe you can't attend for this first year, there may be opportunities for you to jump in for the second year of the cohort when we're working with some more complicated crops. Will you be asked to limit your other plantings to prevent cross-pollination? I will let maybe Glenn answer that question.
What
Oh,
is the question?
will they be asked to limit other plantings to prevent cross-pollination for this first year for like the tomatoes, the lettuce, kale, and beans?
No, because these are self-pollinators. Some of them are strongly self-pollinating. We don't expect any crossing, especially with such a small planting. I wouldn't anticipate too many problems with contamination.
The second year, though, that would probably be a different story.
Yes.
When would the planting start? Are you thinking that would be around February, or would you hope for people to be planting in January?
Hmm. I think we're trying to get it where they're learning it. They're planting it when they're learning it. So I think as soon as they get the seeds at our first meeting, we could lay that out in terms of ready, set, go.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because the second class in February, we're talking about seed planting and all of those things. So by that point, at the beginning of February, you should probably have your seeds and be ready to put them into the ground right after that first class. So I think when we've done this in the past, we asked people to have their beds prepared before we had that class on seed planting so that you were ready to get started right away. And you will not be selecting your own seeds. You will be ordering specific varieties that are going to correspond with the course for the 4 crops mentioned.
Glenn, someone was asking a question if there's any mentors, seed mentors on Lanai. Do you know of anyone?
No, I don't know of anyone.
I wrote for her to send me an email. So we can see what
Okay.
we can do to support there.
Yep.
Thank you. Just illustrating our point, there's such a wealth of connections and knowledge available in this team. So if you are interested in finding someone in your area, please don't hesitate to reach out and I will connect you to someone who can help. All right, well, it's 6:15, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.